Hey guys, Rick here from Stony Acres Gardening. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about what you can be planting during the month of January. And I love January because it is the beginning of the gardening season for me. What? January? Yeah, that's right. It is. We start the first of our seedlings in January. And so I'm going to talk to you today about 10 or 11 different seedlings that you can get started during the month of January if you live in zones 5, 6, and 7. So this is video number 1 in a series that I will be doing at the first of every month this year. So we do this every year. First part of the month we do a planting guide, what you should be planting for this month based on zones 5, 6, and 7. So make sure that you subscribe to my channel so that you can check back and see these videos. All right, so let's get started. There is quite a bit actually that you can get started in January. Again, this is seedlings that we are going to be starting indoors under lights. We're not planting out in the garden yet. My garden has a foot of snow and is frozen solid right now, but we can get things started indoors, and there's a few things that you really do need to get started in January so that you can get a head start on your garden and get them planted at the right time. So first on the list is broccoli and cauliflower. These are going to be at the end of January. I just wanted more than anything else for you to be aware that the time is coming for you to get those planted. You want to have those plants out in your garden about 4 weeks before your last frost date, which means you need to start them about 12 weeks before your last frost date in order to have 8-week-old transplants to go out in the garden. For some of you, that very well could be the end of January. And so make sure that you do that math 12 weeks before your last frost date and see if it's time for you to plant broccoli and cauliflower, even kohlrabi as well. Get those seedlings started now so that you can get them transplanted out at the right time this spring. Next on the list would be Tatsoy. So Tatsoy is one of my favorite hardy greens. It's an Asian green. Tastes very similar to bok choy, but it has a very different growing pattern. Looks more like a spinach, kind of grows in this rosette. Super, super hardy, and so it's a great plant for growing early in the season. I like to plant some in mid-January so that they're about 8 weeks old in mid-March, and then we find someplace warm for them out in the garden, up against the house or up against a building, maybe in a cold frame or a hoop house, and we're going to plant those for a very early harvest. You'll be harvesting from those, first part of April, middle of April. You'll be really happy that you got those planted. So get some Tatsoy seedlings started indoors now. Next on the list would be your onions and your leeks. Now, onions and leeks need to be planted out in your garden about 6 weeks before your last frost date. That means in order to have, because those seedlings need to be about 10 weeks old before we transplant them out into the garden. So you need to get started now. Do the math. My last frost date is about the 15th of May. That means I need to get those seedlings planted about the 1st of April. 10 weeks before that is January 15th, is when I need to get started planting those onion and leeks seedlings. So you definitely need to get your onions and leeks. If you don't do anything else that I talked about in this video, get your onions and your leeks planted in January. Next on the list would be lettuce. I like to plant a little bit of lettuce in January. Lettuce isn't as hardy as some of the other crops that we're going to talk about, but it will do well in like a hoop house or a cold frame, or you could plant it in some containers and put it right up against like a south-facing wall in your house or something like that. Great way to have an extra early harvest. So get, not a lot, maybe half a dozen to a dozen plants planted during the month of January so that you can set those guys out in mid-March, someplace warm, and you'll enjoy having some extra early lettuce this year. Next would be Swiss chard. Swiss chard is a very hardy plant that does really well in the cool weather. I would start some Swiss chard in January, and then you're going to set that out sometime in March, and maybe possibly offer a little bit of protection from a hoop house, maybe some fabric grow cover or something like that to just kind of keep it warm at night. But it will do really well. And then to go along with that Swiss chard, you could plant some kale and some collards as well. Both of those are very hardy, super hardy, and so you could plant both kale and collards now as well in January. And I don't plant all of my kale and collards in January. I plant some more in February and maybe even some more in March, but I get the first of my seedlings started in January so that I can get them out the middle of March in the garden, give them a little bit of protection for a little while, and then they give me an extra early harvest of all of those leafy greens early in the season. So get all of those Swiss chard, kale, and collards planted during the month of January. Another leafy green that is very hardy that's going to do really well is spinach. Now, I don't plant all of my spring spinach in January. In fact, I direct sow quite a bit in February in a cold frame, but I do in January try to start, again, a half a dozen to a dozen plants that I can take out and plant in some of my containers that are in warmer areas, or stick them in a corner of a cold frame or something like that, so that I have some extra early harvest. So January is a good time for spinach. And again, spinach is super hardy. It does really well. So it's going to stand up to the March temperatures and be fine. So go ahead and get some of that planted. And then I do have a couple of herbs for you to get planted in January as well. One is parsley. Parsley is a good cool season herb that also stands up well in the heat, but it takes a little while for it to grow and get established. And so January is a good time to get some parsley started. 1 or 2 plants is all I ever do, but you want to get that planted mid-January, and then you're going to set it out. It takes a little bit longer for it to grow, so it's probably more like 8 to 10 weeks before it's ready to go out in the garden. So probably the first part of April, you're going to put that out in your garden, and so you want to get it ready now. And then the last one is chives. So chives is a perennial herb. You'll only have to plant it once. But if you want to have some chives in your garden, you'll need to get those started relatively early. They take a long time to grow and mature and to get ready to transplant out into the garden. And so start those in mid-January. You're going to let them grow indoors for 8 to 10 weeks and then put them out sometime in April out into your garden. And then that should be the last time you have to plant chives, because they're perennials and they should come back. I planted the chives that we have in our garden now. I planted in January of 2013. And we're still eating from them in 2025. So they've 12 years now that we're eating from the same plants that I originally established all the way back then. So chives is another great one for you to start in January. So that is your list of all of the different crops that you should be starting in January. I did put a written list down in the description of the video if you want to check that out as well. Now, all of this, of course, is seed starting. We're going to be starting these seeds indoors under lights. And we are really making a big effort this year to teach people more about growing their own seedlings. Last year, I went to several different nurseries around our area. I went to some big box hardware stores. I went to some grocery stores that had nurseries. I went to some farm stores that we have in the area. And then I also went to some private nurseries as well. And at all of those places, they were selling tomato starts and pepper starts and broccoli and different herbs and things in 3-inch pots for $6. Can you believe that? I grow 20 different tomato plants in my garden. If I had to buy tomato plants, it would cost me $120 just for tomatoes. And I literally grow hundreds of other starts every year. It's just ridiculous how expensive seedlings are getting in stores. And so you really need to learn how to grow your own seedlings. And so this year, we're doing a big push to help people learn how to grow their own seedlings, so you don't have to pay these just crazy prices that we're having to pay at the stores nowadays. So here's how we're going to help you. We've got a basic seed starting workshop where I'm going to give you kind of the basics of how to get started. By the time we're done with this little workshop, you'll be able to go out and get some seeds planted, and it's free. So it's going to be about 45 minutes to an hour long. We'll teach you during that time, and then I'm going to spend a little time afterwards answering questions. We're going to do this on a private platform so that it's not, we don't have to worry about internet trolls and all that kind of stuff. So you do need to sign up for it. So you have to register for it. So there's a link in the description of this video that you can click on to go get signed up for that. And all I need is your name and your email address. And then we're going to actually run this workshop several times during the season. So we'll probably end up doing it 6 times. It'll be the same workshop each time, but I want to give lots of people lots of options for when that they can come and see this workshop. So we're going to run it live every time. And if you can't make it, there will be a replay, but we're going to do it live. And so I encourage you to get signed up so that you can come and see that live. So we're starting those in mid-January, and go get signed up. Click the link down below. You're going to love that little workshop. So again, it's free, so click on the link down below. Okay, that's all I have for you for this week. Go get some seedlings planted in January. It's awesome that we're starting another season, and make sure you check back because we'll be doing these planting type videos every month, the first week of the month. All right, that's all I have for you for this week. Everybody have a fantastic week. Happy gardening.